guys! When I asked around about what type of video I should film, one of the most popular responses was about how I got into houseplants, why I'm obsessed with houseplants so much, my journey of how I became obsessed with plants, I think. So we'll start off at the very beginning. My parents have always had plants in our apartment. When I grew up, there was always plants. We had cacti and succulents, some snake plants, pothos, fern, things like that. Most of the things that I showed in my houseplant tours in my living room and kitchen, those have been around for a really long time. So I've just kind of gotten used to being around houseplants growing up. It was just a very normal thing. I don't remember how many years ago this was, but it was quite a while back. It was the middle of winter, maybe December, February. It was really cold outside. It was snowing, I remember that. My mom and I were going to some sort of event or thing in the late afternoon or evening. It was already dark when we were leaving, and we were passing at the end of our street. We have recycling bins, and someone had left a really large ficus there, which they were clearly throwing out and getting rid of. So on the way back from this event later that night, my mom and I decided that we are going to haul this giant tree back to our apartment. We didn't even know if this tree would survive. It looked a little bit in rough shape. It was clearly quite wild. It was clearly left to grow with no oversight, and it had been thrown out into the cold. It was snowing from someone's warm house into this below freezing temperatures in snow. It was probably under a lot of shock. We didn't know how long it was left out there, but it was maybe a couple of days actually. So we didn't know that if it would survive or anything, but we decided to bring it back to our house, and it was heavy, but we brought it back and we brought it up a couple of flights of stairs. My dad called us crazy, but I love this tree. I took care of this tree. I pruned it. I tied its branches so that it wouldn't be so wild, so that it would grow in a more upward shape, that it wasn't like all flopping around and just doing whatever it wanted. It was in my room for a really long time as well. I really like this tree, and it is still in our living room to this day, and it is wonderful and I love it. But this wasn't really the real catalyst, what brought me to start loving and collecting houseplants the way I do right now. Last year at the end of August, I started university and I moved into an apartment about 30 minutes away from my university city. I knew I wanted some plants there because it was just something that I thought would make the apartment more homey, because as well that's what I'm used to. I did like plants and I wanted some because they're like nice decor and things like that, so I got a couple of plants when I moved in. It was also like a nice hobby to start to read more about these plants and the actual care that they needed, because the houseplants at our house, I didn't really take care of them. Every once in a while my mom would say to water them and I would, but I didn't really keep up with them. So it was also a nice hobby about discovering what different plants needed and the light they need and watering and things like that. The Netherlands are really great when it comes to markets, and my university city had a market every single Friday from the morning to the afternoon, and basically every Friday after my morning classes I would go to this market, check out the food stalls, just all the other stalls, the things they were selling, because I just liked, even if I wasn't there to buy things, I liked to check out what people were selling, and I liked walking around markets. And it being the Netherlands, of course, there were flower stalls and plant stalls, and the Netherlands is very well known for growing plants and flowers, of course, but plants as well, and they're one of the biggest. Like when you think about Europe, where most plants come from, it's the Netherlands. Even like more rare plants and things like that, Netherlands is where it's at. And also in this market, these plants were being sold for a lot cheaper than you would find in your local stores or supermarkets or things like that. So I ended up getting plants there all the time. I would usually have a quiz on Friday afternoons, so I was starting to be known as that girl who brings a different plant to class every Friday among my classmates in this course. I never really ended up making a lot of friends or really any friends in university. Like, yes, I talked to my classmates and things like that. We'd sometimes go for lunch together, but there was never really a connection with any of them. I didn't go to parties or then therefore have that typical uni experience. I didn't have any roommates or things like that. I didn't mind living alone, but it wasn't always easy. I ended up being alone for most of the week at least. I would go home for most weekends, but during the week I was alone and I was lonely. And having these plants around me made me feel less alone. I know it might sound a little crazy. It's not like I sat around and talked to my plants, which, by the way, if you do, no judgment here, but it did help me deal with my loneliness. It was a hobby to care for these plants, and it was interesting to learn about them and care for them and watch them grow, because they're essentially living things, and it gave me something to do. I also started watching a lot of plant YouTubers to learn about plants and seeing other people collect plants and things like that. But yeah, it just made me feel like there was more life around me than there actually was in my empty apartment. And this is not an uncommon experience. So many plant collectors that I've talked to have similar experience and have said that plants help them deal with depression. And while it didn't solve completely my problems, it also helped me deal with it. And I also grew kind of attached to my plants, which was kind of an unfortunate thing, because when COVID hit and lockdown happened at the end of February and the start of March, I went to Luxembourg to my family's house, and with the thought that I would be there for a maximum of 2 weeks, because the full lockdown hadn't hit yet and there was uncertainty whether it would happen at all. So I didn't know when I was going to Luxembourg then that I wouldn't return to my apartment for several months. So I left all my plants there. And so lockdown went on for a really long time, and after maybe a month or so, I had to prepare to emotionally detach from these plants, because there was no way they would have survived, and they would definitely be dead and beyond saving by the time that I would be able to go and water them or get them or, you know, save them. And I took it quite hard, and this may sound a little stupid, but I cried. I cried because I knew my plants were dead. Plants that I had spent months collecting and growing and caring for were dead. And these plants were essentially my emotional support crutches at a time when I was feeling really alone and down and in a really bad headspace. So losing that was really hard for me. After sort of coming more to terms with the fact that there was no way these plants would survive and I had to get over it, I knew that I had to. It was hard, but I slowly started to deal with it, and I started my plant journey from the start in Luxembourg. I started getting a plant here, getting a plant there. Now I have more plants than ever, and I love them, and I love to care for them and watch them grow. And I love being part of a community that also loves the same thing as I do. There is such a great plant community on the internet. I'm a part of a couple of Facebook groups where people share their plants and collections and sell them and buy them and trade them. And also I'm a part of a Discord group that I cherish so much. The link will be in the description down below. Of course, it is the same houseplant Discord group that I mentioned in a couple of my other videos. It is for anyone who has houseplants, loves houseplants, has any questions, or wants to share, or wants to see other people's houseplants. We have different channels for if you have questions, maybe your plant has some issues, or you just want to show off a beautiful plant, or just talk with other people who share your hobby. And I really, really love this group. I have made friends there, and just in general, I am very happy to be a part of a community like this. And of course, this YouTube channel, it is very small. It is not, I'm not by any means a popular YouTuber or even a knowledgeable one at that, but I love sharing my plant journey and thoughts on the internet. This video might have been just a slightly more serious one than you might expect, because, you know, you might expect me to say just, well, I just really like plants, and that is true as well. Just like any other hobby, I really like plants, but that is the real reason why I love them. It's because they helped me at a time when I was not my best, and it is the case for a lot of people who really come to love collecting plants, is because it does help them in an emotional way. And like I said, it's just like any other hobby. Some people are really into sports or fashion or whatever it is, and for me that is plants and plant care and plant collecting and things surrounding that. So yeah, that is how I started my plant journey. I would love to know how you started yours. Do you have any plants? Do you have 5 or 50? That doesn't matter. Tell me how you got into plants. If you are into plants, maybe you're not. I don't know why you're here and still listening, but great. Maybe you should get some plants. If you have any questions for me, you can also leave those in the comments down below. Like this video, subscribe to my channel, please. And yeah, that's it. That's the video.